What's going on, guys, and welcome back to All Abilities No Filter. I'm Jake, and I'm just super pumped to be here with you guys today. Today's conversation is one that I have been waiting to have and super excited about because it is our second episode in our educational series. So if you missed our first episode a while back, it was the IEP breakdown. So we took the IEP, which is, as we all know, a incredibly long, incredibly intensive document. And we kind of broke it down section by section, going down what should be in each section, what it should look like, what parents should look for, what teachers should strive to make it look like, just so that people feel comfortable and confident that it's the best plan for the student. And today we're moving on to our second episode, which is, again, another topic that I feel like it really relates to everyone, because if you are a parent or any guardian, a grandmother, a grandfather, aunt, uncle, whatever it is, if you are representing a child in the special education process, whether that's through an IEP or just getting the services needed, whatever that is, today's conversation definitely is something you want to listen to, because what we're going to talk about today is the importance of the parent and teacher relationship. Because, guys, I think we all know when a student has an IEP or is in special education, two of the most important people in that kid's life is going to be the parent, of course, number one caretaker, numero uno, number one advocate for the child. But then the next person in line is typically going to be that teacher. They're spending the most amount of time with that kid, but they're also making decisions. They're also creating things that are influencing how this kid is going to be able to operate in a social situation, an educational setting, decision making. I mean, a teacher has so much influence, but when you're throwing in special education, it just amplifies it. So I think we can all agree that these two people in this kid's life have to be able to work together, have to be able to communicate with each other. Because I think we can all agree on is when that relationship is positive and respectful and the lines of communication are there, it can flourish. It can create a wonderful situation. It will trickle down into the IEP meetings and just parents feeling more comfortable and knowing that their kid is in good hands and everything like that. But also, same thing from the teacher's point of view. I'll go ahead and tell you, as having experience, nothing quite stresses a special ed teacher out more than a disgruntled parent. I mean, it is one thing as a special ed teacher, it would keep me up at night, just knowing a parent doesn't like me. I mean, you can't sugarcoat it, really. If parents don't like what you're doing with the student, or think that you don't care, or in some situations think you're purposely trying to sabotage, or whatever the situation is, that affects everything. It affects your ability to work with other kids. It affects your mood walking into a classroom. I mean, so when the relationship is not working on both sides, it's so detrimental to everything. And that's what we're kind of get into today is this relationship and how it needs to be extensive. It has to be year round. It needs to be respectful and understanding and all the above. And so that's what we're going to be kind of talking about today. And I kind of want to give my background a little bit, because I think I'm blessed enough to be able to have a good outlook on this looking from a parent's point of view and a teacher's point of view. So I've been working in special ed for going on 15, 16 years now. I started off in self-contained, working with amazing kids, and I've been able to work in pretty much every setting that you can think of, everywhere from self-contained to resource to pull out, working in vocational, but now having the opportunity where I am now working with residential placements and working with kids that are a little more severe, where their situations frankly suck. They are coming to us with a lot of trauma-based backgrounds. So it's a whole nother population that I've been able to work with, but it's a whole nother set of parents and guardians that I've been able to work with and help and assist. So I get it from the parents' point of view because I've worked as an advocate with my own advocacy group for a long time, but also I've been the teacher in feels like hundreds of different IEPs and things like that. So that's what we're going to break it down into. We're going to break it down into what type of relationship do you guys have with your teacher or with your parents and things like that. So that's pretty much what we're going to get into. And the first thing we're going to start with is, I think we can all agree on, is the communication part of this between the parent and the teacher. Because what a lot of the times I see when I'm working with parents or when I was working in a teacher where I'm holding IEPs constantly is the communication between the two parties is not a once a year thing, guys. You should not be communicating with each other on that one day a year of the IEP. All that does is create a room full of strangers that are making decisions on a child. And there's going to be no support there. There's going to be no prior positive relationship there. You're just looking across the table from a stranger. If you're only having these conversations once a year in person, guys, these conversations, these questions, they need to be happening all throughout the year. And where it is, where parents are feeling comfortable voicing their concerns, voicing or wanting updates. Teachers, you should be sending updates whatever you feel comfortable with, every month, every quarter, whatever it is. But also just sending positive things, letting them know how wonderful their child is and the progress that they're making, whether it's very minimal. Who cares? We're looking for small wins here, guys. We always have been. But sending those updates throughout the year and talking throughout the year, whether that's simple emails, simple texts, if phone numbers can be exchanged and people feel comfortable with that, but just having that open line of communication 364 days a year. On that 365th day of the year, you're sitting across the table with someone that you've been talking to all year, and you're just talking about it again. You're not sitting there hearing about things for the first time and expecting this conversation to happen in an hour, or feeling like the conversation has been positive and building. You're not going to get that in an hour in an IEP. We're creating a plan for this kid for the next year. It can't be creative effectively in an hour. These strategies, these accommodations, these modifications, they need to be talked about with the parent and the teacher throughout the year. I'm not saying you have to sit down and have an IEP every month, but sending an update every month or every 2 weeks, or parents being able to reach out and ask specific questions and getting the answers they need. That's so important. And I think we can all agree on that. But in so many cases, I know in a lot of cases where I've been the advocate for parents who have brought me into the IEP, or I'm coaching and training the family on just how they run, what questions to ask, things like that. And I look at them and I say, "Oh, when was the last time you had this information?" And they look at me and go, "Well, it was the last IEP." And I ask them, "Well, have you asked for it? Have you?" And they say no. And it takes a while for me to be able to talk to parents to get them to understand that they're allowed to ask about their kid throughout the year. They don't have to wait to the IEP meeting. They have every right to want updates, because guess what, guys? In that IEP, we have measurable goals. We have measurable objectives that the kids are supposed to be able to hit during the year. So ask for updates on that. Ask them how are they doing with particular objectives and goals. And when you get that information throughout the year, that IEP becomes so much less intimidating, so much less of you feel like you're going into a debate or a fight or anything like that, because you've been in constant communication. You know what's going to be talked about in the IEP. There's nothing worse than surprises and talking about things you never had heard about, or behaviors that have occurred in classroom that you haven't heard about till that day. So these conversations, they have to be being had throughout the year. Waiting till that one day during the IEP, nothing's going to be done. Nothing is going to be productive, because you're just catching people up. You're just talking about what's happened in the year, and you're not having enough time to talk about, well, what changes in the IEP are we going to do to increase productivity? What new goals are we going to be able to do? But also having time to talk about what are the positives? What are the accomplishments throughout the year? Because all you're doing is updating throughout the entire conversation, because you haven't been doing it throughout the year. So parents, please, throughout the year, just ask questions. Now, let's talk about how you're asking those questions, parents. I know when you're seeing behaviors at home, when you are not seeing maybe the progress you want to see being had in class, that builds frustration, that builds worry and things like that. So when you want to send that email to that parent, that teacher, asking for an update or asking why things are not progressing, I'm going in and telling you and giving you some advice here. You got to check your tone or the wording of that email. And you can't allow your frustrations and your worry to kind of be shown through that, because I'm going to go ahead and tell you, as a teacher, when I get those emails, and when I've gotten those emails from parents and I can see that they're upset, or I can hear or read that they're upset, or the frustration through the email, it just sets the conversation off on such the wrong foot. Because I'm going to tell you, parents, teachers are overthinkers. So when we read a frustrated email, we'll typically jump to the worst possible conclusion, that you're really, really mad at us. And that's going to affect the way that I respond. So parents, when you are sending that initial email or asking for updates, please do your best to word it or make it sure you're coming across that to the teacher, that you're appreciating what they're trying to do with your kid and things like that. But you don't want to start off a conversation in frustration, because that dictates the exact way that whole conversation is going to go. Like I said, teachers were overthinkers. We might jump to the worst possible conclusion, and we don't like it when people are mad at us, especially parents. So make sure when you're sending an initial email, a text, or if you're calling the school to speak, make sure we're just checking ourselves and making sure we're not allowing making the teacher feel like we are hostile, or that we are upset or mad. And parents get that way. I totally understand that. But if we initiate a conversation with frustration, that's how the conversation is going to go. You're going to get a very timid, a very insecure, a very defensive teacher. You're going to get that response from them. And that is going to just start off with conflict. It's going to start off with, okay, it's the parent versus the teacher. So, but if you're starting off with a vibe of appreciation, or just wanting an update or anything like that from the teacher, it just starts things off so more relaxed. And a relaxed teacher is going to give so much better updates. They're going to be excited to talk to you. They're going to be excited to give you all this information that they already have. So just make sure that when we're starting initial conversations, we're doing it that way. But teachers, you better be okay with parents asking for these updates, because guess what? This is the field you chose, okay? You chose to be the line of communication for this child's progress. So you can't be getting offended or getting frustrated that parents are asking questions throughout the year. It's literally your job to answer those questions and answer them effectively. That is what you signed up to do. So making a parent feel like they're an inconvenience because they're asking for updates on their child and asking for updates on how they're doing, making them feel like they shouldn't be doing that, is completely, well, I mean, frankly, it's unacceptable because you signed up for it. You signed up to be the educator. You signed up to be the point person that the parent can talk to and get updates and understand what they're doing in a classroom setting. That is your job. Your job is not just to give an update once a year. Your job is to give updates throughout the year and make this parent feel comfortable. So it's a two-way street. When parents ask, you have to make them feel validated and appreciate the fact that they care enough about their student and their child to get these updates and want to know, because that person is going to be a huge support system for you. They're going to be a huge tool that you can use to meet these kids' objectives. So when you get those first questions, when you get those first wanting updates, you can't take it as they're checking in on me. They don't trust me to do my job. If that's your first inclination and your first go-to, then it's just going to create a defensive conversation. You have to have the first reaction is that this is the parent. They deserve updates. They're asking the questions they should be asking, and look at it as a positive. You have a parent here that wants to take a role in their child's education. And I think we can all agree is when you have the opposite of a more absent parent that isn't as involved, it can be more difficult. So be appreciative of that with a parent. So it is a difficult balance sometimes to, one, get across what you want to get across, but also in a respectful and calm way that doesn't initiate confrontation or stress or just that battle that we all know happens sometimes. So that communication part is so huge. When it is done openly throughout the year, when each party knows they can ask questions to each other, but not feel like they're being annoying, not feel like they are being a problem or anything like that. I mean, I feel like that's the way it is in any relationship you have. No one wants to feel like they're an annoying person. No one wants to feel like they're a hassle or a problem. So parents and teachers, when you make the other person feel like that, your communication is just going to break down. And so with that open communication comes just laying the groundwork that it's fine to ask questions. We want you to ask questions. We love to give updates to the parents, and parents feel comfortable with their teacher. And that just, again, establishes that friendship or friendly relationship, and that will trickle down into the IEP, any type of classroom visits. It just becomes so much less tense and so much less stressful when that open communication is there. Yeah, and I think that's something that goes without saying, but you would be surprised how many times it kind of needs to be said, and understanding why it is such a huge thing for everyone. All right, so one thing that I kind of thought about before the episode is, and I've talked with parents about this, whether it's being an advocate or helping out a family friend with their kid's IEP, whatever it is, and we're kind of discussing how we're going to interact with the teachers and the principals and things like that. I break it up into categories, okay? And you probably fall into one of these categories of what type of relationship you have with the teacher or teachers you have with the parent, because they're kind of the gateway a little bit, because the teachers are, because if you have a positive relationship, hopefully you have positive relationships with the rest of the IEP team. And these are categories that kind of break down what type of relationship that each parties have. And the first one is, of course, it's the collaborative team. And I feel like this is the one we should all shoot for. Okay. And this one it's in the name of the category. You're a team. You have a team feel. There's mutual respect. There's transparency and communication. No one feels like anybody's trying to hide something. Parents, I know some of you guys have felt this way to where you feel like you're not getting the whole picture. You don't feel like you think things are getting glassed over in an IEP meeting, or you're not quite getting the full picture of how your kid is doing. But in the collaborative team, it's full transparency. Again, that comes with they're asking questions, they're getting the answers that they feel like is what they're looking for. Maybe they're not getting the answers they want, but when they ask questions, they're feeling heard. They're feeling like, okay, I have everything I've said has been taken into account for. Nothing has been brushed over as far as what I'm saying or what I'm trying to say. So you have that transparent communication. And the shared goal is we're going to do what's best for the kid. That is the nucleus, that is the center around what these conversations are having. That builds a collaborative team. We're not having ego trips here. We're not just trying to one-up each other in these situations. Parents and teachers, they listen to the insights of each other. There's little things that are more important than validation in this relationship. Each person has to feel validated by the other. So if it's an IEP meeting, a phone call, an email, teachers, if parents are giving you, it can be suggestions, advice, whatever it is on how to work with their kid, those concerns or those opinions have to be validated. There's nothing worse than giving an opinion or giving a thought about something and someone completely disregarding it. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel unwanted. And a parent should never, ever feel like that. Validation should be coming from all ends. And same with the teacher. Parents, guess what? I'm going to enlighten a little bit right here. These teachers did not go to college and pick this career for nothing. They picked it because they have a complete and utter passion to working with adolescents and children that are like your child. That's my passion. That's every teacher's I know's passion. So that's why they're there, and they have the expertise on things, and they know the strategies and the techniques. So when they are offering them to you or telling you what's going on in the classroom, the validation is needed also there. This teacher is spending 8 hours a day working with your child, putting in their best efforts. And because your child's not meeting a certain goal or progressing how you feel like they should, isn't a reason to completely disregard all the amazing things that the teacher's trying to do, and validating their want to work with your kid or their want to progress with your kid. So that validation part is huge. I mean, it's there in every way. When I talk to my wife, and everyone knows, like I said, husbands and wives, they're going to have problems. But when my wife and I try to communicate, we have very different ways of feeling like a conversation was positive or things like that. Because I tell her the way I feel like a conversation was productive or I feel comfortable with one is if I feel heard, if I feel validated. You don't have to agree with anything I say, but when I understand that you have appreciated what I've said and have taken it into consideration, have thought about it and haven't just disregarded my thought, it makes me feel so good. It makes me feel like I've left that conversation in a better place than when we started it. And that has to be kind of hyper-focused on when we're having these conversations between parent and teacher, because both opinions are immensely important, but we have to tell each other that. We have to make sure the other party feels that way, because when they don't, lines just break down because you're just not going to want to communicate. You're just not going to want to have those conversations, so they're going to get avoided. But again, with this collaborative team category, we're getting regular updates, proactive problem solving. It's huge, guys. So if a concern is brought to the teacher, or if the concern is brought from the teacher to the parent, then you have a quick conversation of, okay, well, we're going to try this, and then we're going to try this. Don't bring a problem with no solutions. Teachers, don't tell the parent, oh, so-and-so is throwing pencils at so-and-so daily. Sorry, that's just why I'm just giving you the update. Okay, that's going to cause a parent to freak out. That's going to cause a parent to think, okay, my kid's just throwing pencils all day. Throw out the solutions to this. All right. Okay. So to fix the problem, we're going to put so-and-so at this table and at that table, and we'll work on relationship building. That you vocalize the problem, but you gave the solution with it too. So the parent's going to feel more relaxed that it's being addressed and it's just not able just to linger in the classroom. So that positive and cooperative problem solving is there. You're working together as a team. You're not trying to overburden or trying to make sure your solution is the one being used. Instead, you are sitting there working with each other, trying to find the best solution. And it doesn't matter who it comes from, because that's not our ultimate goal there. So, and then when we're a collaborative team, the student receives the cohesive interventions that they need, because they're getting all parties' input and understanding what the home is like, the classroom is like. So these interventions are able to handle each and every area, which is so huge. So, and then you're going to have the trust. And guys, I think we can all believe trust leads to better communication. You communicate better with people you trust. So the collaborative team is going to have that open trust. So that's the first category, is the collaborative team. The second category is the professional, polite, but the surface level. All right. So the interactions, they're courteous, but they're not deeply collaborative. All right. You're friendly with each other, but you're not taking the time to use the conversations to problem solve, to talk about what the classroom is like and getting the updates and things like that. You're just wanting to keep everything friendly, pretty much. And that's the main thing that's wanted here. You got minimal conversation. The only conversation is the one that has to happen. So these are the only talking during IEPs or during teacher conferences or whatever it is like that. You're communicating, but only when you have to. You're not going out of your way to get the updates or talk throughout the year. Nothing is real negative. You're just kind of going with the flow. You're just kind of going with it there. So each side kind of operates independently. The teacher's doing their thing, parents are doing their thing, and then they talk when they have to. In this one, you're going to have, progress might happen here with the kid, but you're going to miss so many opportunities, so much input that's needed there. And then teachers, they're going to misunderstand home challenges. It's very important that the teachers know when the kid is doing great in the classroom, but then they go home and they fly off the handle and these behaviors kind of happen again. Because then you're not working together to see what you can incorporate in home that's happening in the classroom and things like that, because you're separated, you're doing your own thing there. And you're really going to kind of risk sliding into misunderstanding there. So that's category 2. You're professional, you're polite, but it's a very surface level relationship. All right, category 3, it is the overwhelmed and disconnected relationship. Here, the parent, the teachers, they both feel so overwhelmed, and they kind of just take it all on themselves. So they're feeling it too much to even communicate. So in this one, it's emails are going unanswered, conversations are very sporadic. You're kind of thinking that both sides know what's going on. You're just kind of leaving it copacetic. You're kind of like, okay, each side knows what's happening. We're not going to take the time to update it because the parent is overwhelmed with home life. Things are going on, and same thing with the teacher. Other situations are causing a lot of stress or extra communication needed here, and that's going to be a very inconsistent implementation of anything, because you're not getting the full picture of both sides and both opinions and both input there. Student support is going to suffer because things are going to be changing a lot, because you're implementing things that aren't going to be concrete. They're not going to be things that can last or barely be implemented throughout the year. So again, that's that overwhelmed and very disconnected relationship, and that it often leads to conflict and stress there. And then, of course, the last category, category 4, that's the high conflict. It's the one we all strive to avoid. It's constant disagreement, constant mistrust. These are the IEPs you're just dreading, because it almost feels like, you know how a boxing match takes typically a year to happen, and through 364 days, you're just training for it separately and how to one-up each other and how to beat each other. It's almost like that. The IEP is the main event match, and the two parties are separated, not talking to each other, and really the end goal has no longer become what is best for the kid. It's how am I going to win this IEP? How am I going to come out getting what I want? Maybe it's not exactly what my kid wants, or teacher too. How am I going to go in here showing that I'm the teacher, I'm in charge, I'm going to make the decisions, and we're going to go in here and have a good meeting or a good conversation. It's I'm going to win. And that's where I've kind of said it a little bit, that's where egos aren't checked at the door. So that's that high demand, high conflict. Communication it's adversarial. It is when you are in conflict with somebody, you're not hearing them. You're just annoyed the whole time. You're just waiting for them to be quiet so you can talk. So you're not hearing the information in this. One, you're just wanting to get out of the IEP. And we all know that just leads to typically the IEP not being finalized because no one's agreeing on anything, or it can just be something people just agree to get out of there. So the student is going to be, their needs are not met. We all know this. And the line of communications out there is not there because you just don't want to talk to each other. You don't feel respected and validated by each other. You don't feel like the other person wants to hear from you. You feel like you're a inconvenience, and when it gets too severe, parents, and they're going to feel sometimes they're going to feel like this is intentional, that we are purposefully sabotaging their kids, or we don't care enough to implement certain things, or we like all the other kids way more than their kid. And when it's just confrontational, it's hard not to feel that way. And teachers are going to feel it from the parents too. They're going to feel like this person's trying to get me fired. Nothing I do is going to make them happy. They're talking to other parents about me. They're calling my boss. There's a lot of legalities in IEPs and special education that with IDEA and everything, and we're thinking parents are out to get my license. I'm saying this because I've felt that way when relationships have been like this, and it's not a good feeling. So when that's going through your head during conversations, during IEPs, during whatever, there's no way open communication is going to be happening. It's just not there. And then parents also, sometimes you're coming from a situation with, it was terrible. It was horrible. I've heard the horror stories about how hard it is to get the things they need. And then you have a new teacher come in. And so many times I've seen the parent almost take out on the new teacher what they were put through with the old teacher. And that is like when they're having conversations with the parents and they're like, well, so-and-so did this. And when so-and-so was the teacher, this was happening, and I'm not going to let this happen again. When you have a brand new, ready to go teacher in front of you, you're already starting the relationship off how you left the other one. It's got to be a clean slate with this. Okay, because it happens a lot. New teachers are going to come in all the time. You got to give them a chance to build that relationship with you and make it very understood that they're there to help your child, which I'm going in and telling you parents, the teachers are there to help. We didn't go into this field to sabotage. We went into it with a passion to help your child. And it's very important that parents understand that, and that's their first instinct, because teachers teach differently. I have a very different approach than a lot of my colleagues. I'll go and tell you, I'm a very slow-paced type teacher. I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush progress. And I've had parents in the past think that I'm just not doing enough. And then I have other colleagues that are wonderful teachers that are more fast-paced, changing things up a little bit more. But the end goal there is the same. And typically we're going to get there at the same pace. It's just a different process. So parents, teachers, they're trained in it. They went to college for it. They paid typically a lot of money to be able to be the teacher for your kid. So you got to understand that. Don't make it, don't have just because it's not happening exactly the way you want, doesn't mean we're purposely trying to sabotage your kid. I promise you that is not the intentions there. But so those are the categories that I kind of break it down, and hopefully now that I kind of talked about the characteristics of each category, you can kind of see where you're at, because the main goal is to be part of that first category, that collaborative team. Because even the relationship where you're polite and you're cordial and you kind of talk when you have to, yeah, that might cause lower stress, but it's not going to have the progress that you want. So make sure we're all striving to be that collaborative team. And it's a year-round process. It can't just happen during the IEP when that 1 year when you're around the table together. That just can't be it. And then once you have established that relationship of positivity and respect, it's so important that you nurture it. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's going to be there all the time. Okay, so nurture it. Emails, texts, whatever that is. It's a year-round thing. And even in the summer, like I said, things like that. But that constant communication can be very respectful. It can be very friendly. A teacher can't feel like their boss is checking in on them all the time. That is something that, again, I think we can all agree on. If we feel like your boss is breathing down your neck, it's not any good. But with that being said, about the constant communication, you also have to respect boundaries as well. Parents, I love you. We know what you're doing when you're just advocating for your kid, but the teachers have their own lives. Sometimes I will go ahead and say, as a teacher, there are sometimes I needed or still need as much separation as possible. And it's not because I don't love what I do. I absolutely love it. Couldn't imagine myself doing anything else, but I'm human. Teachers are humans, and they need a break. They just do. And so if they don't respond to a text or an email as soon as you send it, don't be offended, because it's good for teachers to be separated for maybe up to a week or whatever, because they got to recharge. Special education is a very intensive thing. We bring it home with us. It affects our relationships, everything. So sometimes we got to take a break. So you have to understand boundaries. You have to understand letting the other person live their life, but also balancing that out with making sure you're getting the support you need. Because parents, it's just how it is. Your kids are very important to the teacher, to us. We love them. They're very important to us. But teachers have their own lives. They have their own families that are their priority. So you have to make sure that you're balancing out and you're letting those boundaries take shape, and you're respecting those boundaries. And parents also, your kid's not the only kid in the classroom. It's just, that's the facts. Our classrooms now are way overpopulated, and now you're throwing special ed in there. Because you got to think of it like this. There might be one class, but you got a group of 15 kids that all learn at different levels. So you might have one classroom, but that teacher is probably running 3 different lessons at a time, and your kid's not the only one in there. So when a teacher looks at you in an IEP and says, well, we can't implement this because we have to make sure the other kids are also getting what they need, but we can approach it this way. They're not saying, we're going to throw your kid into the wayside and we're focusing on these kids. And you can't take it that way. You have to appreciate that fact that they are teaching a lot of children at the same time. And your kid is not the only one in that room. They're very special. The teacher loves them, but they cannot sacrifice the progress of every other kid in that room to make sure your kid is hitting the goals at the rate you expect. You just have to know that they're getting the exact same amount of attention and instruction that every other kid in there is doing, but it's also individualized. The teacher's not in there just grouping your kids together in one group, that they're taking the time to individualize things. And that's where the conversation comes in. It's okay to look at a teacher and go, well, how are you individualizing it for my kid? That's a absolute wonderful, appropriate question that teacher better have an answer for. Because special education is an individualized education. It's not something that we can just teach a whole group of kids at the same time in the same way. We have to individualize it to every kid. So asking that question is very appropriate. So don't don't go into your own mind that your kid's not getting what they need without asking the questions, because you might ask the question and they have the response right there ready for you, and it could surprise you and be the greatest response you've ever heard and exactly what you want to hear. So give the teacher a chance. If you have a problem or have a concern, ask the question. Don't just assume the worst. Give the teacher, who is a professional, who's signed up to do this, the chance to answer your question. I mean, that's what they need. That's what they're there for, is to answer your question. So ask the question before jumping to the conclusion and assuming intentions. And different detrimental things like that. So always just make sure that, like I said, before you are just thinking that the worst, you're asking the question, because most of the time the teacher's going to have the response, because you're not the only one asking the question a lot of the time. That's just how it is. I mean, I know sometimes you feel alone. I know parents, sometimes you feel like you're the only one in your situations, but I guarantee you're not. When I was in my self-contained classroom, I had 14 other sets of parents going through the same thing the other parent was going through. And one parent was not the only one asking that question. So give the teacher a chance to answer your questions before jumping to conclusions and things like that. But so with the relationship, what you just need to take back is, number one thing, the communication, of course, and you're striving to be that collaborative team, not the team that just talks whenever, not the team that just assumes the other two parties are handling their own thing, and not the one that's just looking for a fight. You're the team that has the mutual respect, that enjoy talking to each other, but have established that you are there for the child. If you do not have that, and your intentions are anything but, then I'm going to go into the relationship's doomed. Because even if you don't agree, knowing the other person is just doing what they feel like is the best for the kid and the student, it alleviates a lot of things. You're not just jumping to the worst case scenario in things. So be mindful of that, and always look for ways to build that relationship. And you might be in a relationship with a teacher or parent now that it is stressful. It's nothing but conflict, and it is very adversarial. Then you got to break that relationship completely down to the bones and rebuild it. Establish the main goal between you two, and then open that line of communication. Implement the constant validity of each other's opinions, and then it just grows from there. But if you're in a relationship of conflict with the teacher or with the parent, and you just keep going the route you're going, it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get fixed, I promise you. So you're going to have to tear it down, break it down to the bones, and rebuild it from there, and establish that trust and that respect and that want of each other's opinions. Because until you break it back down, it's just going to fester. like any other relationship. But if the end goal is to get this child and this student to the absolute pinnacle of their abilities, then that relationship between teacher and student, teacher and parent, has to be nurtured, has to be taken care of. It has to be built. It has to be something always on your mind a lot of the time. So, and once that's established, it's one of the best ones you can have, and it's just going to amplify and increase the progress that the kid's able to make and everything. So take time, figure out what category you're in. Do you need, or what you need to work on? And if you got to break it down, tear it down to the roots and rebuild it from there. But just allowing something that you know is bad just to keep festering, it's just going to get worse. And the kid is just never going to make the progress. It's something that we all have to reflect on a little bit. But guys, I really hope you're able to take something from this conversation and maybe look back and figure out where your relationship is with the teacher or the parent, and figure out what you need to fix. Is it the communication? Is it the trust? Is it the validation between you two? Is it the preconceived notions of other people's intentions? You got to kind of figure out what the problem is to fix it. And you have to care enough to look for that problem and understand that it's a bad situation. Because until both of you do, it's never going to get fixed. And I encourage everyone to reflect. And if you have a great relationship, fantastic, but you can't just let it sit there. Keep building it, making sure it's being grown, making sure it's being nurtured and everything. So I hope you guys are able to take something from this, and keep an eye out for our third episode coming up. That's going to be a wonderful one too. The topic's going to be released very soon. And of course, as always, guys, go visit our website at allabilitiesnofilter.com, where you'll see all of our other episodes and understand the different resources that we've had from other guests. It's wonderful. Please go check it out. And of course, go follow us, guys. We're on everywhere you can find your podcast, but super exciting, we're now on YouTube, so you're able to see these amazing videos too, and kind of put the face with the voice and everything. And also, as always, leave your questions, leave your comments, because that's how we build these episodes, and we want to make sure they are reflecting what you guys want and what you guys want to hear about. But please go like and follow and share this with anybody you feel like it'll benefit from. But please send the questions in. If I didn't hit on something that you feel like is related to your situation, please let me know. Let us know. And we can't wait for you guys to listen to future conversations and understand what else we got going on. But until then, guys, thanks for joining me for this conversation. But I tell you, I cannot wait to get around for our next unfiltered conversation. Thanks, guys.